Real quick, this video is for my friend Kathy, who is one of my Patreon members. She asked me about this, and I was going to send her a long email, but I said, you know what? Why don't I make a video about this? I've been wanting to do this. So many people ask me this question, so I am going to make this video for Kathy, but for everybody. So you got Kathy to thank for that, because this is some magical potion that I'm sharing with you, and I hope it helps somebody, and I think it would if you follow it, but you don't have to follow it. This is just my method, and so here we go, starting it right now. So, how do I memorize these long scripts? You know, a few people have asked me that, you know, from time to time, and so I figured I would make a video and talk about how I actually do it. And you know, you might not find this useful for you, but this is the way I do it, and I've been doing it for a very long time, and I've done it successfully for a really long time. So, you know, I know this method definitely works, but it takes quite a commitment too. And I'm not saying this is the best way to do it, but this is the best way for me. It's actually the only way that I can do it. So what do I do? Well, first of all, what you have to understand is that where you memorize your script is going to have a lot to do with the success of whether or not you're going to be able to do it. You should definitely plant yourself in an area where you can continually be, someplace where you're comfortable, someplace where you can type, someplace where you can, you know where everything is, like a room that you're used to, or, you know, whatever. Just find an area that is comfortable for you and that you're familiar with. The reason for this is because your brain will grab on to whatever is in the space that you're in and kind of attach that to the words that you're memorizing. And this is going to be something that you're going to have to break away from in a while, but at the beginning, it's really important to first get these words in your body. And so for me, you know, when I first started memorizing scripts, I was in the Bronx. Well, actually, that's not true. When I first started memorizing scripts, I was in Asbury Park, New Jersey. I had just left New York City for the first time. I was living in Jersey for a couple of years, and so I was living in this loft. And I used to sit on my Morris chair, which is the same chair that I have now. Now this train is coming, so I'm going to have to interrupt this for a minute. So let me pause this for a second and I'll come right back. So we'll start with the Asbury Park space. All right, the train is gone. So, the first example is I was in my loft in Asbury Park, and I had my Morris chair, and I had things set up in a certain way, and it was like a big open space, so the kitchen was in a certain area, and there was a porch in the back. Now it's starting to rain. Fuck. All right, that didn't work out very well. So, I'm back in my apartment, and actually this is kind of cool because I'm shooting with my anamorphic 35mm lens, and I am about 8 to 10 feet away from the camera, and I'm halfway through the room back to the back, so I'm interested to see if there's any kind of separation, because it's an APS-C lens and I'm shooting at f1.8, so is that crystal clear back there, or do we have a little bit of bokeh going on? I'm not sure. So, and also, obviously, if I'm this far away and I'm shooting at f1.8, much more of a challenge to get me focused if I move at all. So, going to be kind of interesting to see, because this is one of the challenges of working with these lenses. When you're far away and when you want to shoot at a really fast aperture, you want to get your focus together and you don't have autofocus, it's all manual, and you want to get your lighting together, like I got lights outside of the frame. Yeah, kind of interesting, but I like the way the composition looks, kind of cool, even though kind of bored with this room, right? Like I'm shooting in here all the time, so I got to make some changes, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, I want to talk about memorizing. And I'm going to try to do this as best I can. Like I said, it's not the easiest method probably, but it's what works for me. And so I'm sure there are a million different ways to do this, but this is how I work. I kind of memorize as I'm writing, like I'm doing it at the same time. As I'm typing a script, I'm kind of memorizing because I'm going over the dialogue like over and over and over again to make sure that it's really conversational, you know? And so as I do that, it's kind of embedding itself in my brain. And so what I do is as I'm writing, I'll write, say, 15 or 20 pages, which is a lot, but I don't know how to tell a short story, so chances are it's going to be pretty long. So let's say I write 15 or 20 pages. I'll write it, and obviously while I'm writing it, I'm working on it. I'm going back and forth with the dialogue, and if it's a screenplay, I'm also working on all the other stuff, the exterior kind of explanation and the interior explanations and the movement of the camera and stuff like that, you know, the location. If it's a theatrical script, I'm really just working with dialogue and incidental stuff like he takes a deep breath with sadness, you know, something like that. But anyway, let's say I finish 15 or 20 pages and I think I have it. Then what I do is I just read it over and over and over. I will read it 100 times. And that's kind of my rule, where I'll read something 100 times until I get to about, say, 25 or 30 pages where it just doesn't make any sense. But at the beginning, I'll just read stuff over and over and over again so I nail it. And then I stop. Then I come back the next day and I go to the next 5 pages, 10 pages, whatever comes out of me. But before I do that, I have to read everything that I wrote the day before. And for that, I'll read it maybe 2 or 3 times from the very beginning of the script to the next section. And this does a few things for me. First of all, it further embeds it in my brain, but also what it does is it makes me kind of become immersed in the story where I can move forward really knowing what I did the day before. And this helps in the memorization process as well as giving me clarity moving forward. When I'm writing, I know where I am, because when I first started writing theater, it was like overwhelming to me because I came from being a songwriter. So you're talking about writing something that's 3, 4, 5 minutes long. And all of a sudden I'm writing 2.5 hours. You know, I'm writing something that's taking place over 20 years or whatever. So I had to figure out a way to do that. So this is the way I did it. And I'll tell you some other stuff as I go along in the video as well. So I'll read what I did the day before 2 or 3 times, then I start writing again. And I'll write 5 pages, 10, 20, whatever comes out of me, whatever the flow is going with, that's what I'm going to write. And basically I write until I'm tired, until I just feel like I'm done, you know. And when I get to that point, what I'll do is start reading everything that I did from the day before and from today. I'll read it as many times as I can stand it. I mean, until I can't keep my eyes open. Then I put it away, go to sleep, and then I come back the next day. 5 more pages, 10 more pages, but first I have to read everything that I wrote the first 2 days at least 2 or 3 times, and then I start writing again. Spend as much time as it takes me to write this part. I feel like I've gone as far as I can go for the day, and I go back and read everything again, including what I did today, as many times as I can stand it. And I will do this until I finish the play. So really, I'm not so focused on testing myself to see if I have something memorized. I'm just reading constantly. I'm just reading the words that I've written, and I'm talking about every single word. I don't skate over anything, and I don't ad-lib, and I don't skip anything. Like, every single word has to be very specific so that every time I read it, it's exactly the same. Because I don't ad-lib at all when I get on stage. Every word is scripted, right down to the, you know what I'm saying? Like, everything is scripted. So, you know, I might, when I get on stage, change a few things, but they're really incidental. It's kind of like jazz, you know, like a passing tone or a leading tone or something like that. But basically, every single word of a 200-page, 250 pages, whatever, 150 pages is memorized. So, what do I do when I have the whole script? Now I've written 278 pages or whatever. And I've been reading every day. And obviously when I get past, say, 100 pages or something like that, I'm really just going to read everything once, get to that page and write more, and then read it all as many times as I can stand it. But I'm just going to read once leading up to the new day. Because at this point, it's really starting to get into my body, because I've done this now for weeks and months and sometimes years. Are you dedicated enough to do that? That's a question. But just reading it over and over and over again every day, it starts to kind of ooze into your body. It's like osmosis. And it gets in there, and you just start to learn it. So let's say I get to the end of the script now, and I have everything. What I do is I read it every day. I just read it every day as many times as I can. And here's an important thing. I try to write in the same place every day. I don't go to Starbucks and then go to the beach and then go to the library. I try to write in the same place every day. Because like I was saying earlier in the video, my brain will attach things in the space to what I'm doing in that moment. So if I have like that Broadway sign back there, or, you know, the heads that are behind me sometimes, you know, I don't know if you could see that, but, you know, the picture back there, I mean, my brain knows what's around me, and it kind of attaches itself to everything, to the space that I'm working in. And I try to stay there until I feel like I really have it nailed. And this will take months. Like I would say a 2.5-hour play will take me a good 6 to 8 months for me to really have it. Like feel like I just have it, you know? And then what I start to do is I go out to a different space. Like let's say I'll just go outside, you know, and see if I have the whole thing memorized. And I find out that I have nothing memorized. Because the minute you leave that space, your brain, everything that it's been holding on to is kind of like an anchor or a foundation. Everything that you're learning is gone. And so now you're everywhere else, and your brain is seeing all this stuff, and there's so much going on in the circuitry of your head, and then the words are just gone. Like, then you get really depressed, you get frustrated, you get like overwhelmed, you think, oh my God, I can't do this. How is this ever going to happen? But it's going to happen. Because you go back in, and you just read and read and read, and every single day you go out to different places, and you just get as much as you can. You just like work through it, you know? Just work through it, but don't read it outside of the space. That's how I work. I'm not allowed to read anything unless I'm in the space where I learned it. When I'm out someplace else, I have to do it through memory. And you do it every day, like every single day. And I will stay out there for hours and hours, and I'll walk. You know, and if you live in a place like New York City, it's awesome because it's just chaos around you. Like there's so much going on. You can't control it. You know, there's people going by, people talking, you're hearing stuff, you're hearing sirens, you're hearing cars, you're hearing the subways, you're hearing everything. Even down in Asbury Park, I go down by the beach in the summer, it was crazy, just madness. Wherever I lived, you know, get out, and suddenly, once you start to feel the command coming in other spaces, now you're really starting to get it. Like no matter where you go, no matter what time of day it is, no matter what, you have this story in your body, like you know it. Then what I start to do is I will stand in the corner of a room, like where the two walls meet, and I will just run those lines over and over and over again with no input around me. Like I don't see anything, I don't hear anything, it is just the corner of a wall, that's it. And I can feel my voice, so that's kind of cool, but I don't know if that has really anything to do with it, but now I have nothing. Now I have nothing. So now my brain has absolutely no anchor. It's like I'm floating. You know, I'm up in the sky, I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I'm just saying the words. But in my head, I'm seeing the story, I'm seeing the people, because while you're memorizing, and you know, if you wrote it too, but I mean, even if you didn't write it, you're starting to visualize the story, or you should have been, because if you're standing against that wall and you got nothing to, you know, kind of hold you down, suddenly you need to see the story. Like in the case of my play, Brooklyn Quartet, or even Broke Wide Open, I would see the people that I was, you know, becoming. Like I played my grandmother, my mother, my father, my best friend Gene, like all these people, I would see them, even my girlfriends. I would become these people, or I would see them, or I would see the situations that I wrote. Brooklyn Quartet, I created these fictional characters. I knew what they looked like in my head, even though I would never share that with anybody else. I knew what they looked like. And so I would see them, and as I was saying the words, it was like I was watching a film. It was like, I didn't even know that the words were coming out of my mouth. It was like I was watching a movie. It was like it was bouncing back to me because the wall, the vibrations of my voice are coming back to me. So again, I'm not a scientist or anything like that. I don't know how this works, but there was just something about it that was able to kind of detach me from my own body, but I had to generate what was happening. And so that really helped me as well. And I would do that for hours, hours, hours. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting, and again, this is my process, and maybe this is my weakness, but while I'm learning a script, I don't watch anything. Like, I will not turn the TV on ever. Nothing. No movies, no TV shows, no videos, nothing. I don't want anything else in my brain but this story. I want to think about this story 24 hours a day. And, if you're in a relationship or something like that, I'll tell you right now, it's kind of fucked up. Like, it's annoying to people because I'm rehearsing in the shower, when I'm on the toilet, when I'm cooking, when I'm in bed, waking up to, after I sleep. I mean, obviously I do sleep, but I mean, I'm thinking about it all the time, and I am saying these words constantly. I'm hardly in contact with anybody. I mean, what I've learned over the years is it's important to maintain some balance. So there are certain people who I will have in my life during this process, but they got to be people who understand the way I'm working, who understand what I'm going through, and who understand that I'm not going to engage in anything that is interrupting the synapse in my brain. That's kind of, it's like laying concrete in my head. It's becoming an immovable object that cannot be messed with no matter what. So when I get on stage, no matter what happens, the lights could go out, somebody could say something in the audience, anything, a car alarm could go off, nothing could stop me from having this story. Even if I have to stop, even if somebody talks to me and I talk back to them, I know where I am. I never get lost. I never lose my lines because I put in the work. I do all of this memorization work. And it's really about repetition. Like, I'm telling you this, and I'm telling you this in a short amount of time, like within 30 minutes or however long this video is going to be. But I'm telling you, this takes, if you're amazing at this, it'll take you months. If you're not amazing, it'll take you, give yourself a year. I remember once I was watching an interview with Chris Rock, and he had done a Broadway show. I think it was called Motherfucker with a Hat. And he said at the beginning, because he wasn't experienced at this, he could not fathom, how am I ever going to learn these lines? Like, how's this going to happen? Because at the beginning, you can't imagine you're looking at 270 pages, and you're like, and if you're a solo artist like me, all of those words are yours. Like, he was in an ensemble. There were a bunch of other actors, so they split it up. But with me, I'm doing it by myself. So you're thinking, how is this possibly going to happen? Like, who does this? This is just crazy stuff. But it just happens. I'm telling you, it's about desire and dedication and commitment and never negotiating with yourself, doing it every single day. Every single day, repetition. That will get you through, and that'll do it. And I think it's good for your brain. I think it's good for your spirit. It's like a very spiritual practice for me. It's not just learning lines to a play. It's putting a story in my body and then being so good at it that I'm creating this beautiful offering to an audience. I'm having a beautiful shared experience with people because, imagine coming to like, if you haven't seen me, right? Imagine going to the theater. I mean, unless you've seen like John Leguizamo or, some other great solo theater artist, Billy Crystal. I mean, imagine going to look at one person on stage for 2.5 hours with, like, I have very minimal set. Like, I don't have a big set. Sometimes I'll have a big mural, or I had a 6-foot scaffold that was on stage with me in one play. I had, like tables. I had some stuff, but it's not like The Lion King or something like that. That's what I'm saying. You're basically looking at me. Maybe I'll have a beautiful lighting design or something like that, but still, you're looking at one person sharing a story. Now, it's not like The Moth or something like that. I'm not just telling you a story. I'm creating a bubble on stage that you're observing, and I'm trying to invite you into this bubble. So it's like you're watching a movie, or it's like you're watching TV. And I'm giving you as much as I want to give you right up to the point where I'm giving you the opportunity to imagine what a lot of it looks like, what the people look like, where we are, even though I might be very specific, like in Brooklyn Quartet, I was at a pizza place on Classen and DeKalb called Tony Pizza Spot. Like I will get very specific, but not everybody knows that place. So you're going to create that in your head. You know, if I talk about Fort Greene Park in Brooklyn, between Myrtle and DeKalb, like you don't know where that is. You know, if I talk about Juniors on Flatbush Avenue, you don't know where that is. If I'm talking about the Bronx, you have your perceptions of what these places are. And so you're kind of participating in the process, but I have to have this story nailed, like absolutely, like without, unquestionably in my body, mastered, in order for me to create an environment like that. And that takes a long, long time. And that's why after the pandemic, when people were trying to get me to reopen a play that I had let go of, because I had to let go of it to make a movie. And you know, you can't, like when you memorize, here's the other thing. When you memorize a long process like that, a long story, like Broke Wide Open for me, or Brooklyn Quartet, or, you know, the Red Plaid Suitcase, you're talking about 2 hours, 2.5 hours worth of words in your head. And then in order to move on to another project, you can't leave those words in there. You have to release them. You have to let it go and make room for something new. You know, people think, oh man, you got like 4 plays in your head. You could do them at any time. No, you can't, nobody could do that. I mean, if you can do that, you are a motherfucking genius. I don't know anybody who could do that. But I don't know, maybe there are people who could do that, but I can't do that. Like, I can work on one story at a time, and then I'll do it for 5 years, 6 years. And it's so much fun to have that opportunity, to have that in your body. It's incredible because you can play with it, you know? Like I did 8 shows a week for 6 months almost of Broke Wide Open. 8 shows a week, 2 shows on Wednesdays, 2 shows on Sundays. And I got to really play, you know, physically with the show. If, you know, if there were things going on in the world that put me in a certain kind of mood, I got to play with that. Like you really get to, even though you have every single word specifically happening the same way every single night, if your energy is different, every performance is unique unto itself. That's what's so cool about theater. Like what happens in the show tonight, only me and the people who are in the audience are the ones who get to experience this. Because what happens in tomorrow's performance is going to feel completely different, you know? It's going to have the same emotional impact, the things that, you know, you're going to feel appropriate to the moments that you're supposed to feel, like if that's sad or if that's happy or if that's funny or whatever. But there's going to be some kind of basic energy that's going to be different every time because people are different. Human beings are, nobody's a monolith. Everybody's different. So every experience, every night was completely different. Completely different. Brooklyn Quartet, the same thing. I mean, it's based on the shooting of Sean Bell in 2006, right? So I did that show for 5 years, but imagine the nights that I did that show when Sean Bell's mother and father were in the audience. It was a little bit different. Or imagine when I did Broke Wide Open was the story of my very ambivalent search for my biological mother and my fostering and my adoption, right? And my search for my biological mother and my adoptive parents. Well, imagine I did 8 shows a week for months and months. Imagine what it was like when one night there was an adoption conference at St. John's University out in Queens, and that night they bought out the theater. So there were 149 people there that night, all from the adoption world. First mothers, which means people who were separated from their child at birth, either of their own volition or not in many cases, and all adoptees, all in the audience. Like nobody else was there that night. It was like our community. It was a little bit different that night. Like the energy I felt that night was unbelievable. It was, you know, it was like a remarkable experience for me that I'll never forget. But I could say that about every night, you know, every single night. Every night is a remarkably profound experience for me. But it can only be that way if you memorize every single word, if you learn everything. I'll finish the video with this. You know, I've taught a lot of performance workshops and writing workshops over the years. And I always require people to memorize their work for a performance workshop. because I happen to feel, and this is me, so if it's my workshop, I'm kind of teaching my method, right? And what I notice is that when I read off of the page, like if I do poetry, if I go to the Nuyorican Poets Cafe or something like that, and I'm at a slam or I'm at an open mic or whatever, if I read from the page, it's like kryptonite for me. And I always wondered, why is that? Like, why do I have to have it memorized for it to be powerful? For it to be a real experience, for me to really connect, for me to really be able to grab the audience by its throat and pull it right up to my face and just do it like this, like we are right here. Why does it have to be like that? Only when it's memorized. But when I'm reading off the page, I can't get to that. And I realize it's because when I have it memorized, it's in my body, it's coming from the inside out. But when I'm reading from the page, it's just outside in, like I'm reading. And even if I know it well, I'm still using it as a crutch, and I'm not looking at the audience. Even though with the light sometimes I can't even see, but I can always see somebody, and I'm always picking somebody out and looking them dead in the eyes and connecting, or looking dead at that audience, and I'm picturing all these faces, and I am connecting with people, and I can only do that if I have it memorized. The only way I can hug everybody at the same time is if it's memorized. The only way I can love everyone, the only way I can do this, the only way I can plead with them to understand what I'm feeling is if I have it in my body, if it's in my heart. That's the only way it works for me, and I highly recommend it. And I also just think that as a spiritual practice, it's kind of like mental yoga, or mental Pilates or running, running for me. It's probably like that more than anything else, because running for me is very zen, like when I'm running, or jumping rope. When I'm jumping rope, I don't know what's going on. You could be doing anything around me. I just kind of get into this thing. And all I hear, I hear myself breathing. I can kind of feel my organs moving. Like I could just feel my blood flowing. And it's the same thing with, the memorization process. When I'm working on it, it's just repetition. I'm just doing things over and over and over again. But what's really interesting about it is that at the beginning, it's just a bunch of words being repeated and you just memorize it. And anybody can memorize a bunch of words if you're dedicated enough. Anybody could do that. But once you have it in your body and you really have it memorized, not anybody can make it good, can make it a real story, can really have an interactive, beautiful experience with people. For that, you have to bring out your humanity. You have to bring out your empathy. You have to call on who you are as a human being and how you deal with people. And you can only, in my opinion, you can only do that when you have it memorized. Just my opinion. And so, yeah, that's all I got to say about that. All right, you know what? That's not all I have to say about that. I have one more thing I want to share with you. And you know what? I think the best way for me to describe this is to share a story with you that I actually experienced. And this is perhaps the most important thing you could do to make sure that you have your story memorized. When I finished memorizing, at least when I thought I finished memorizing my play, Brooklyn Quartet, I called my dear friend Ebony Brown, who lived in my neighborhood in the Bronx, and I asked her to please come over to my apartment so I could share the story with her, because I told her, I think I have it memorized now, but I won't really know unless I can share it with one person sitting right in front of me, like 2 or 3 feet in front of me. And so she came by, and it was actually hilarious because she didn't know whether she should move her face or not, or really show me how she was feeling or how she was receiving. She didn't know whether she should laugh or cry or just sit there like a statue, like she didn't know. So it was kind of weird for me at the beginning, and this is my whole point. If you really have a story memorized, no matter how the person's acting in front of you, no matter what kind of energy you're getting back from this person, you're not going to lose your place, you're not going to lose the words, you're not going to lose the story at all. Because think about it, if you're sharing a story with somebody and they're like, maybe they see a friend passing by and they're like, oh, yo, what's up? You're not going to forget when you're telling somebody extemporaneously, when you're just sharing something with them that happened in life. You know what I mean? So if you're sharing something that you memorized, no matter what this one person is doing, you're not going to lose it. You're going to have it because you have it mastered, because it's coming from the inside out. It's in your body. You know the story just as if it's happening right now. And that's the key to great storytelling too. When you tell a story, it has to be as if it's happening for the first time ever. Nobody has ever known this before. It is immediate. It's in the moment. That's what a great story is about. And so anyway, Ebony, you know, that was, sorry, a train's going by. That might be why it sounded kind of loud right now. But anyway, that was incredibly valuable for me. And I think that's something that you should absolutely do when you're finished. And I forgot to include it before, so I wanted to add this on to the end of the video. So find somebody to come sit in front of you, and trust me when I tell you, if you could do that, and if you can get through the whole story, then you'll know that you have it memorized. And I'm going to finish now because it is fucking freezing out here right now. All right, so yeah, now that's all I got to say about that.